The winter moon hung low over Riverside Park as Marcus guided his Harley through the winding paths. His leather jacket fought against the December wind, but he barely registered the cold anymore. These midnight rides had become his meditation, a way to shake off the grease and stress from long days at the auto shop. Frost clung to the playground equipment, glittering like scattered diamonds under the streetlights. Marcus had the park to himself, just the way he preferred it. No curious stares at his tattooed arms. No parents pulling their children closer when he passed by. The rumble of his engine echoed off the frozen ground as he rolled past the jungle gym. That's when something unusual caught his attention, a sound that shouldn't exist in this empty space. He throttled down, letting the bike idle as he strained to listen. There was again a cry, weak and muffled, carried on the bitter wind. Marcus killed the engine and swung off his bike, his boots crunching through the thin layer of snow. The sound grew clearer as he approached a wooden bench near the swings. What he saw made his blood run cold. A bundle of blankets lay on the frozen bench, dusted with fresh snowfall. But beneath those blankets, something moved. A tiny arm reached out, fingers grasping at the frigid air. What the? Marcus breathed, rushing forward. He found an infant, no more than 10 or 11 months old, wrapped in threadbare blankets that did little against the freezing temperature. The baby's face was red from crying and cold, tiny features scrunched in distress. Dark wisps of hair peeked from beneath a worn cap. Marcus's heart hammered as he scanned the empty park, searching for whoever had left this child. Nothing, just shadows and silence. A piece of paper, weighted down by a small rock, caught his eye. With trembling hands, Marcus picked it up. 3 words were scrawled across it in desperate handwriting. "Nobody wants me." The baby let out another cry, weaker this time, and something deep in Marcus's chest cracked open. He'd seen plenty in his 43 years, bar fights, broken promises, betrayals. But this was different. This was innocence itself, abandoned and helpless. His hands, rough from years of engine work, carefully gathered up the bundle. The baby felt impossibly light in his arms, yet somehow heavier than anything he'd ever carried. Those wide, trusting eyes looked up at him, tears frozen on chubby cheeks. "Hey there, little one." Marcus heard himself whisper, his gruff voice gentling in a way he didn't recognize. "You're safe now." He wrapped his leather jacket around the baby, tucking it securely against his chest. The child's crying softened to whimpers, small fingers clutching at his shirt with surprising strength. Marcus looked at his motorcycle, then at the precious cargo in his arms. This wasn't exactly standard transport for an infant, but the temperature was dropping fast. The nearest hospital was miles away, across town. His apartment was 6 blocks. "All right, sweetheart," he said, making a decision that would change everything. "Let's get you somewhere warm." As he carefully secured the baby against him and started his bike, Marcus had no idea that this freezing December night would mark the beginning of the most important journey of his life. The note's cruel words echoed in his mind, but he was about to prove them wrong. What secrets lie behind this abandoned baby? And can a grizzled biker truly become the father she needs? The answer will surprise you. Marcus's apartment had never felt so inadequate. He stood in the doorway, cradling the baby against his chest, and saw his bachelor pad through new eyes. Motorcycle parts cluttered every surface. Band posters covered the walls. An empty pizza box sat on the coffee table from 3 days ago. "Well, this is home," he muttered, flicking on the lights. "For tonight, anyway." The baby had quieted during the ride, lulled by the motorcycle's vibration, but now she stirred and whimpered. Marcus felt panic rise in his throat. He knew engines, not infants. He could rebuild a carburetor blindfolded, but had no idea how to care for something so small and fragile. He cleared a space on his bed, building a fortress of pillows around the baby as he'd seen in movies. She watched him with those impossibly large eyes, tracking his every movement. When he pulled away to think, her tiny hand shot out and grabbed his finger with surprising force. "I got you," Marcus said softly, surprised by the protectiveness flooding through him. "Not going anywhere." But what did babies need? Food, obviously. Diapers. A proper place to sleep. Marcus glanced at the clock. 2:47 a.m. Nothing would be open until morning. He rummaged through his apartment and found an old wooden crate he'd been using for storage. After a thorough cleaning, he lined it with his softest blankets and set it beside his bed. It wasn't pretty, but it would work. The baby's diaper situation was challenging. Marcus had faced down rival bikers without flinching, but this tiny human had him completely stumped. After several failed attempts and muttered curses, he managed something that would at least keep her dry until morning. "Don't suppose you know how to tell me what you need?" he asked, settling into a chair beside the makeshift crib. The baby responded with a yawn, her eyes beginning to droop. Marcus found himself talking to her as she drifted off about nothing and everything. His mother, who'd passed 5 years ago. His sister Emma, who he hadn't spoken to in over a decade after a bitter argument. The motorcycle shop where he poured his life into fixing broken things. "I'm good at fixing broken things," he whispered, watching the baby's chest rise and fall in peaceful rhythm. "Maybe I can fix this too." Sleep came hard that night. Every small sound had Marcus bolting upright, checking to make sure she was still breathing, still safe. The responsibility felt enormous, crushing. What was he thinking bringing her here? He should call the authorities, turn her over to people who knew what they were doing. But each time he reached for his phone, he remembered those trusting eyes. The note's cruel words. The way she'd grabbed his finger like he was her entire world. As dawn light crept through his window, Marcus watched the baby sleep in her makeshift crib. Her tiny face was peaceful now, no longer red from cold and crying. One small hand curled near her cheek. "All right, kid," he said quietly. "Tomorrow we figure this out. Get you someplace proper, with people who know about babies." But even as he said the words, something in his chest tightened at the thought of letting her go. Marcus thinks he's just helping temporarily, but fate has other plans. What he discovers next will turn his world upside down. The child services office felt sterile and cold despite the cheerful posters on the walls. Marcus sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair. The baby. He'd started calling her Lily in his mind, dozing in his arms. She wore one of his clean t-shirts tied off like a makeshift gown, since her original clothes had been barely more than rags. "Mr. Torres?" A woman in her 50s appeared, clutching a tablet. "I'm Janet Morrison, Family Services Coordinator." Marcus stood, adjusting Lily carefully. "Thanks for seeing us." They moved to a private office where Marcus explained everything. Finding Lily in the park, the note, bringing her home for the night. Janet listened intently, typing notes and asking clarifying questions. "You did the right thing," Janet said, her expression softening as she watched Lily grab at Marcus's beard. "She seems very comfortable with you." "Had to figure things out fast," Marcus admitted. "Still not sure I got it all right." Janet smiled. "The fact that you tried says a lot." She hesitated, studying him. "Would you be interested in fostering her while we search for family or suitable placement?" The question caught Marcus off guard. "Me? I'm not exactly father material. I work long hours, live alone, ride with a motorcycle club." "You found her, kept her safe, learned to care for her overnight," Janet interrupted gently. "Those aren't the actions of someone unfit for parenthood." Marcus looked down at Lily, who'd woken and was contentedly playing with his jacket zipper. Something warm and fierce bloomed in his chest. "Let me be straight with you," he said. "I want to make sure she's taken care of. If you think I can do that, I'm willing to try." The paperwork took hours. Background checks, financial disclosure, home inspection scheduling. By the time they finished, Lily was fussy and hungry. Marcus had bought formula on the way, his first parenting purchase, and now fumbled with the bottle in the courthouse cafeteria. His phone rang as Lily finally took the bottle. Unknown number. "Mr. Marcus Torres?" A professional voice. "This is David Chun from Chun and Associates Legal. I need to speak with you about your sister, Emma Torres." Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. He hadn't heard Emma's name spoken aloud in years. "What about her?" "I regret to inform you that your sister passed away 4 weeks ago after a prolonged illness." The words hit like a physical blow. Marcus set down the bottle with shaking hands. 4 weeks? Why wasn't I told? "That's why I'm calling," the lawyer continued. "Your sister left behind a daughter, an 11-month-old, named Olivia. We've been searching for the child since Mrs. Torres's passing. Her husband abandoned his responsibilities shortly after her death. Marcus's eyes shot to the baby in his arms. His heart began to pound. The baby I found. When the Child Services report came through our network, we made the connection. Mr. Torres, we believe the infant you found is your niece, Olivia Torres, your sister's daughter. The room seemed to tilt. Marcus stared at Lily. Olivia, seeing her with new eyes. The shape of her nose, the curve of her smile. It was Emma, right there in front of him. His sister's child. Her father left her in that park, Chin said. He made it clear he wants no parental rights. Your only living relative who can claim custody. Marcus touched Olivia's cheek with trembling fingers. She grabbed his hand, squeezing it with her tiny grip, and smiled up at him. That smile, it was Emma's smile from when they were kids, before life had driven them apart. She's really Emma's baby? His voice cracked. Yes, Mr. Torres. Olivia is your niece. Marcus held his sister's daughter, his daughter now, in every way that mattered, and felt tears sting his eyes. The connection he'd felt from the moment he found her suddenly made perfect sense. This wasn't just some abandoned child. This was family. This was Emma's gift to him, even after death. A chance to make things right. Just when Marcus thinks he's found his purpose, a wealthy stranger appears with demands that threaten everything. Can he protect the bond they formed? 2 months had passed since Marcus learned the truth. 2 months of learning to be a father to Olivia. Middle-of-the-night feedings, diaper disasters, and more joy than he'd ever thought possible. His apartment had transformed into a baby-friendly space, complete with colorful toys and safety gates. The knock on his door came on a Thursday afternoon. Marcus opened it to find a man in an expensive 3-piece suit, everything about him screaming wealth and privilege. Marcus Torres? The man's voice was smooth, polished. I'm Nathaniel Wright, Emma's husband. Marcus's jaw tightened. The husband who abandoned his daughter in a park? Nathaniel had the decency to wince. I was grieving. I made mistakes, but I'm here now to make things right. By showing up months later, Marcus stepped into the doorway, blocking the view of Olivia playing on her blanket. Where were you when she was freezing on that bench? I wasn't thinking clearly after Emma died, Nathaniel said, but I've had time to reconsider. I want to discuss Olivia's future. Against his better judgment, Marcus let him in. Nathaniel's eyes swept the modest apartment with barely concealed disdain before landing on Olivia. She looked up at the stranger, then immediately reached for Marcus. Mr. Torres, Nathaniel began, pulling out a thick folder. Let's be realistic. I can provide things you simply cannot. I have a 7-bedroom estate, access to the finest private schools, connections that will open every door for her future. She has what she needs here, Marcus said, picking up Olivia. She buried her face in his shoulder. Nathaniel opened the folder, revealing glossy photos of a mansion, expensive cars, vacation properties. I'm prepared to offer you very generous visitation rights. Holidays, birthdays, summer weeks. You'll remain part of her life. Generous visitation? Marcus's voice dropped dangerously low. I'm her father. You're her uncle who happened to find her, Nathaniel corrected. I'm offering you more than most would. Think about what's truly best for Olivia. Can you really give her the opportunities one can? The word struck deep because Marcus had asked himself the same questions during sleepless nights. His apartment was small, his income modest. He couldn't afford private schools or trust funds. But then Olivia shifted in his arms and patted his face with her small hand, giving him that smile that melted his heart every time. She doesn't need your money, Marcus said firmly. She needs love, family, stability. Nathaniel's expression hardened. We'll see what the court says about that. My lawyers will be in touch. He stood, straightening his jacket. For what it's worth, I'm offering you a better deal than you'll get from a judge. My resources can bury you in legal fees alone. After he left, Marcus sat on the floor with Olivia, his heart heavy with fear and doubt. Could he really stand against someone with Nathaniel's wealth and influence? What if the court decided money mattered more than love? Olivia crawled into his lap, babbling her baby language and playing with his dog tags. She had no idea their world was about to be turned upside down. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Snake, one of his motorcycle club brothers. Heard you might need help. Club meeting tonight. We got your back, brother. Looking down at Olivia, then at the message, Marcus felt something steal inside him. He might not have money or fancy lawyers, but he had family, and he'd fight with everything he had to keep his daughter safe. The custody battle begins, but Marcus has one advantage Nathaniel never expected. What happens next will prove that family isn't defined by blood or money. The courtroom felt like enemy territory. Marcus sat at his table in his only suit, borrowed from Big Mike, one of his club brothers, watching Nathaniel's legal team set up like they were preparing for war. For lawyers in expensive suits, briefcases that probably cost more than Marcus's motorcycle. Across the aisle, Nathaniel looked confident, barely glancing in Marcus's direction. All rise, the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Rebecca Martinez presiding. Judge Martinez was a stern woman in her late 50s, her expression unreadable as she reviewed the case files. Marcus's hands were sweating despite the cool courtroom air. Nathaniel's lead attorney, Carson Phillips, stood with theatrical flair. Your Honor, this case is fundamentally about providing the best possible future for a child. Mr. Wright can offer Olivia financial security most children only dream of. Objection, interrupted Marcus's attorney, Lisa Chun, a scrappy public defender who'd taken his case pro bono after hearing his story. This isn't about who has the most money. It's about who can provide the best home. Sustained, Judge Martinez said. Mr. Phillips, stick to relevant factors. But Phillips was just getting started. He presented photos of Nathaniel's estate, financial statements showing his wealth, letters from prestigious private schools offering admission. Each exhibit felt like another nail in Marcus's coffin. Furthermore, Phillips said, Mr. Torres has a questionable background. Exhibit C shows his association with a known motorcycle club. They're my friends. Marcus interrupted, unable to stay silent. Good people who've helped me care for Olivia. Judge Martinez gave him a sharp look. Mr. Torres, let your attorney speak. Lisa stood, her voice steady. Your Honor, may I call my first witness? What happened next surprised everyone. Through the courtroom doors came Mrs. Rodriguez, Marcus's elderly neighbor, followed by Joe from the diner, then Sarah from the park, and finally, in his cleanest jeans and a pressed shirt, Snake from the motorcycle club. One by one, they testified. Mrs. Rodriguez spoke about the nights Marcus called her at 2 a.m., desperate for advice on Olivia's fever. Joe described how Marcus brought Olivia to the diner every Sunday, teaching her to wave at the regulars. Sarah talked about seeing them at the park, the gentle way Marcus pushed Olivia on the swings. But it was Snake's testimony that shifted the room's atmosphere. Look, I know what we look like, Snake said, his gruff voice carrying across the courtroom. Tattoos, leather motorcycles. People see us and think the worst. But Marcus? He's the best man I know. When Olivia was sick last month, he didn't sleep for 3 days. Just sat by her crib, making sure she was breathing. That's love. Real love. Carson Phillips tried to discredit them, painting the motorcycle club as dangerous, questioning their character. But Judge Martinez seemed more interested than dismissive. When Marcus finally took the stand, his hands shook as he swore the oath. Lisa's questions were simple. Mr. Torres, tell us about a typical day with Olivia. Marcus took a breath and started talking. He described morning routines, how Olivia loved to splash during bath time, how she refused to eat anything green unless he made airplane noises. He talked about bedtime stories, about the rocking chair he'd restored himself so he could read to her every night. I know I'm not rich, Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. I can't give her a mansion or fancy schools, but I can give her every single part of me. Every morning when she wakes up, I'm there. Every night when she falls asleep, I'm there. That's what she needs, not money, but someone who shows up, always. Carson Phillips stood for cross-examination, his smile sharp. Mr. Torres, can you provide for Olivia's college education? I'll work extra shifts if I have to. Can you afford private tutors? Music lessons? International travel? I can teach her to be kind, to be strong, to know she's loved. That's very touching, Phillips said condescendingly, but love doesn't pay bills. No, Marcus agreed, meeting his eyes. But money doesn't tuck a scared little girl back to sleep after nightmares. Money doesn't teach her that she matters, that she's wanted. Nathaniel proved that when he left her in a freezing park. The courtroom went silent. The judge prepares her ruling. But one more revelation will change everything. Will Marcus lose the daughter who saved his life? Judge Martinez removed her glasses, studying both men carefully. The courtroom held its collective breath. I've presided over many custody cases, she began. Most of them are difficult, painful decisions where both parties have legitimate claims. This is not one of those cases. Nathaniel shifted in his seat, his confidence wavering. Mr. Wright, you stand before this court asking for custody of a child you abandoned. A child you left in freezing temperatures to possibly die. You speak of resources and opportunities, yet you showed the ultimate lack of responsibility when it mattered most. The judge's voice hardened. Money cannot erase that fundamental failure of character. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Torres, you're not a perfect candidate on paper. Your income is modest, your background unconventional. But this court has heard testimony from your community that paints a picture of a man who has dedicated himself completely to this child's welfare. Marcus felt his throat tighten. The bond between Mr. Torres and Olivia is evident and genuine. Judge Martinez continued. He has provided a stable, loving home where she is thriving. Most importantly, he has proven through his actions that he will always put Olivia's needs first. She looked directly at Marcus. Therefore, this court grants full custody of Olivia Torres to her uncle, Marcus Torres, with no visitation rights granted to Nathaniel Wright. The words took a moment to register. Then Lisa was squeezing his arm. His biker family was erupting in quiet cheers from the gallery, and Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. He'd won. She was his. Nathaniel stormed out with his lawyers, but Marcus barely noticed. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared at the courtroom doors, holding Olivia, who immediately reached for him when she saw him. "Dada!" she squealed, her newest word, the one that made his heart stop every time. Marcus gathered her into his arms, holding her tight while tears flowed freely. "You're mine, sweetheart," he whispered. "Forever and always." The community center buzzed with life as Marcus watched children fill the space. The Emma Torres Youth Center had opened 3 years ago, funded by donations from the Motorcycle Club's charity rides and community support. It provided after-school programs, tutoring, and safe spaces for at-risk kids. Dad! 6-year-old Olivia ran through the door, her backpack bouncing. Her dark hair was pulled into pigtails, and her smile could light up the darkest room. "Hey, princess," Marcus said, scooping her up despite her protest that she was too big for that now. She immediately went to help a younger boy with his homework, showing the same patience and kindness that had saved Marcus's life years ago. Snake walked in carrying boxes of donated books. "Got that delivery from the library," he said, still looking tough in his leather vest, but with reading glasses perched on his nose. Marcus's life had transformed completely. The rough biker who'd once felt purposeless now ran a thriving community center, sat on the school board, and was known throughout the neighborhood as someone who showed up when people needed help. But the biggest change was in his heart. "Ready to go home?" he asked Olivia as the center began to close for the evening. She nodded, taking his hand. "Can we get ice cream?" Miss Betty said she is chocolate chip today. As they walked down the familiar streets, neighbors waved and called greetings. The same community that once feared Marcus now embraced him as one of their own. At the diner, Betty already had their usual booth ready. Olivia climbed in, chattering about her day at school, while Marcus listened with complete attention. Looking at his daughter, because that's what she was, adoption papers and all, Marcus thought about that frozen December night 5 years ago. How lost he'd been. How broken. Finding Olivia hadn't just saved her life. It had saved his. She'd taught him that family wasn't about DNA or money or perfect circumstances. It was about showing up, about love that stayed when things got hard, about choosing each other again and again. "What you thinking about, Dad?" Olivia asked, chocolate ice cream on her nose. Marcus smiled, reaching over to wipe it off. "Just how lucky I am, sweetheart." Me too, she said simply, returning to her ice cream. And in that moment, in a small diner booth with his daughter, Marcus Torres knew he had everything he'd ever need. From a frozen park bench to forever family. Sometimes the most broken people find each other and create something beautiful. This is their story.